Tom Carson, President of the League of Women Voters of Glendale Burbank. Here with me today are Renee Leask and Mickey Pierce, also members of the League. This year, the League of Women Voters is celebrating its 94th birthday. It was formed in 1920 when women first got the right to vote. Our League has been active in Glendale and Burbank since 1940, so we're celebrating our 74th birthday. Membership in the League is open to all citizens of voting age, men and women. Associate membership is open to all others. Our website is lwvglendaleburbank.org. The League of Women Voters is a recognized leader in voter education. We provide complete and nonpartisan descriptions of candidates and propositions. Today we will present nonpartisan information on the 7 ballot measures on the upcoming November 4th general election ballot. Our presentation of each proposition will be in 4 parts. We will describe the existing situation, the proposed changes inherent in each proposition, the fiscal effects of the proposition, and then present the key arguments in support and opposition to the proposition. It is important to note that the League of Women Voters does not write these arguments in support or opposition. We are just telling you what the supporters and opponents of each measure are saying, but the League does not vouch the accuracy of any of these arguments. For your convenience, the League of Women Voters has nonpartisan voter information on the Internet. We'll tell you more about that at the end of our presentation. The first proposition deals with bonds, so I'll say a few words first about bonds. We thought it would be helpful to provide this background information concerning the state's debt, and as well as the impact of Proposition 1 on that debt. What are bonds? Bonds are a form of long-term borrowing, something like a mortgage, that the state uses to raise money for infrastructure projects. The state sells bonds to investors and agrees to repay the investors together with interest according to a specified timeline. Bonds are used because projects such as dams, roads, educational facilities, parks, prisons, etc. involve large dollar costs and are used over many years. The use of bonds helps to fund the initial large dollar costs, which would be hard to fund out of day-to-day operating revenue. Also, the repayment of these bonds over time means that future taxpayers who also benefit from these projects will help to pay for them. So our first proposition is Proposition 1, formerly known as Proposition 43. It's entitled Water Bond, Funding of Water Quality, Supply, Treatment, and Storage Projects. It is a legislative bond act. The question in the proposition is, should the state of California sell $7.5 billion in general obligation bonds to fund various water-related programs? Currently, a majority of California's surface water has come from the Sierra Nevada and Northern California snowmelt that feeds the state's 2 largest rivers, the Sacramento River and the San Joaquin River. Groundwater provides roughly 1/3 of the state's water supply, but many of the state's groundwater basins are currently dangerously depleted. The remainder of the state's water comes from other sources such as captured rainwater, water recycling, and desalination. Much of the state's surface water is delivered to the Central Valley farmland and to the population centers in the Bay Area and in Southern California. Southern California also gets water from the Owens Valley and from the Colorado River. In dry years, it can be difficult to provide all the water needed by California's cities, agriculture, and environment. On the other hand, in very wet years, the state can experience floods. To address these challenges, the state has built various projects, including pipelines, pumping stations, and canals, to move water across the state, and has constructed dams and reservoirs and other types of storage facilities to manage available surface water. These supplement local water storage and delivery systems. Since large water projects were built in the mid-20th century, California's population has doubled, and the value of its economy has multiplied many times. However, California's growth may be hindered by the natural limits on the total amount of available water. So the terms of Proposition 1 are it would allow the state to sell a total of $7.5 billion in general obligation bonds. These funds would be used to manage water supplies, protect and restore wetlands, improve water quality, and increase flood protection. Of this total $7.5 billion, $5.7 billion will be available for water supply and water quality projects only if local water agencies throughout California provide local funding to match the state's funds, in most cases having to match 50% of the total cost of the projects. Now, as to fiscal effects, assuming that an interest rate of just over 5% per year is available for these bonds and that they are sold over the next 10 years as the funds are needed, and then those bonds are repaid over a 30-year period, the cost to taxpayers for those bonds will average $360 million per year on average, for a total of approximately $14.4 billion. On the other hand, it is estimated that there would be savings to local government on water-related projects, likely averaging several $100 million annually over the next few decades. The supporters of Prop 1 say that it supports a comprehensive state water plan and provides a reliable supply of water for farms, businesses, and communities, especially during droughts. They say it does not raise taxes, it is fiscally responsible, and contains strict accountability requirements and public disclosure to ensure that the money is properly spent. The opponents of Prop 1 say that too much of it wrongly focuses on building more dams. No amount of water storage will produce more rain or water. They also say that Proposition 1 does little for drought relief in the near term and does not adequately promote regional water self-sufficiency or reduce our reliance on the already water-deprived Delta ecosystem. The financial supporters to the campaign for this proposition, actually part of a multiple proposition campaign that is supporting both Proposition 1 and 2, so far have raised over $650,000. It's not clear at this point how much will be spent on each proposition. And so far, as of early September, there were no funds raised for the opposition to Proposition 1. Next, we have Proposition 2, formerly known as Proposition 44. It is entitled State Budget Stabilization Account. It's a legislative constitutional amendment. The question in this proposition is, should our state constitution be amended to change how the state pays down debt and saves money in its reserves? At the present time, when the economy is strong, tax revenues rise, and the state can set aside funds into a reserve. When the economy weakens, total tax revenues correspondingly decline, but the goal is to have sufficient reserve funds to be available to help avoid adverse cuts which might otherwise be needed to balance the state's budget. The Budget Stabilization Account, or BSA, established by Proposition 58 back in 2004, is the state's basic reserve. Under current law, 3% of general fund revenues, which at the present time is about $3 billion per year, should be transferred into the BSA each year, but the government may reduce or eliminate the amount of this transfer. Proposition 58 also says that the reserve should not get any larger than approximately $8 billion. Funds can be taken out of the BSA for use in the budget by a vote of the legislature. Due to the adverse economic condition in recent years, the annual transfers to the BSA were entirely stopped, and all of the funds in the BSA were used. In the current year, we have finally been able to reestablish and set aside $700 million in the reserve. Another aspect under this proposition is the fact that the state law requires that local school districts maintain their own individual reserves, minimum reserves equal to 1 to 5% of their annual budget, depending on the size of the district. And many districts, in fact, keep much larger amounts of reserve than this minimum. A final note here is that the state's debt totals about $300 billion. Of this, approximately $150 billion is for retirement benefits already earned by public employees. There are also significant amounts due for infrastructure debt, and several $billion are owned by the state government to local government agencies such as school districts, cities, and counties. So what does the proposition propose? It would reduce the required annual transfer to the BSA from the current 3% down to 1.5% of the general fund revenues, which would be currently about $1.6 billion per year. But it also adds to this potentially a portion of the capital gains related income taxes in years when such revenues exceed a certain level. These capital gains taxes are perhaps the most volatile part of our state's revenue base and grow and fall very rapidly from year to year. Combined, the total transfer thus could increase from the $1.6 billion from the basic transfer to as much as $4 billion, including the capital gains tax. For the first 15 years that this is in force, half of this amount would have to be used to pay down public retirement obligation debt and other intergovernmental debts. After that period of time, the legislature could use this half to further pay down debts or to put it into the BSA. Proposition 2 would also increase the maximum amount that's allowed into the BSA from $8 billion to $11 billion. Once that maximum is reached, the transfer money that would otherwise go into the reserve will be used to build and maintain infrastructure. Proposition 2 also strictly limits the circumstances under which the transfers to the BSA could be reduced, and also the amount that could be withdrawn at any time. In some years, when capital gains revenues are very strong, money would go into a new state reserve for schools and also community colleges. However, this proposition does not in any way change the basic amount of funding for schools under Proposition 98. If the new school reserve is funded, then under certain circumstances, a new state law not part of Proposition 2 would place a maximum amount on how much a local school district could put in its reserve to a maximum of 10% of their annual budget. This new limit could be changed in the future by the legislature by itself. So what would be the fiscal effects of this proposition? Proposition 2 does not increase taxes. It only provides new allocation methods for the use of existing revenues. Under Proposition 2, the state would likely pay down existing debts somewhat faster than it does currently, thereby leaving less money for other things in the state budget during this period of time. The proposition's impact on the overall state budget reserves over the long term depends on many factors, including the state of the economy, the level of capital gains tax revenues, and the general way that the state government implements this proposition. The new school reserve provisions would receive funds only very occasionally, likely only under very good economic times. Once the reserve has funds of any amount, the local school districts' reserves would be limited, and some districts likely would have smaller reserves that they might need in bad economic times. The supporters say that Proposition 2 establishes a strong constitutional reserve fund which will force state government to save money and pay down debts. They say that it will shield taxpayers from unnecessary tax increases and protect schools from devastating cuts. The opponents of Proposition 2 say that it hides a financial time bomb that limits school district reserves, resulting in possible higher costs and deeper budget cuts. They say it also establishes a double standard, a very prudent reserve for the state, but limited reserves for school districts. This proposition is supported by Governor Brown, by the California Democratic Party, the California Republican Party, the California Chamber of Commerce, President Zarenberg. The opponents of this proposition are largely in the education community, including the California Association of School Business Officials and the Association of California School Administrators. As I noted earlier, there's a combined campaign which has received $650,000, some of which would be available to support Proposition 2. So thank you, and now Renee will cover Proposition 45.
Proposition 45 is entitled Healthcare Insurance Rate Changes. It is an initiative statute. The question is, should changes in some health insurance rates require the insurance commissioner's approval before going into effect? The current situation is that healthcare plans are regulated by either the California Department of Insurance, CDI, or the California Department of Managed Healthcare, DMHC. The DMHC is run by a director appointed by the governor, while the CDI is run by the elected insurance commissioner. The majority of insured Californians, about 77%, are covered by either large group private employee plans or government programs. About 16% are covered by individual or small group 50 or fewer employees employer plans. Proposed rate changes for these individuals and small group plans are reviewed by the DMHC or the insurance commissioner, who may declare them unreasonable, but neither has authority to reject them. Insurance companies pay a fee to cover the costs of each department's activities. A new entity on the healthcare scene is Covered California, the health insurance exchange set up by the state as a result of the Federal Affordable Care Act, ACA. The Covered California Board is authorized to negotiate rates and other characteristics with companies that want to sell their products through this exchange. After Covered California's negotiations are completed, rates are subject to review by the carrier's respective regulator, either DMHC or CDI. This review does not include specific authority to reject rates. In 1988, voters passed Prop 103, which created the elective office of Insurance Commissioner and gave the Commissioner review and prior approval authority over automobile and homeowners insurance rates. The proposal under Proposition 45 is that the Insurance Commissioner would have to approve rate changes for individual and small group employer plans before they could be implemented. The application process would require the company to publicly disclose and justify its requested rate changes. Consumers or insurance companies could challenge the Commissioner's findings in court. Rates in effect as far back as November 6, 2012 would be subject to refund if found to be excessive. Under Prop 45, rates would be defined to include any charges that affect cost, such as co-payments, deductibles, installment fees, premium financing, and more. The DMHC would continue to review and regulate the small group and individual insurers that it now oversees, but only the Insurance Commissioner could approve or reject their proposed rate changes. Insurance companies would continue to be charged a fee to cover the costs of administering the new law. Prop 45 would also prohibit the use of an individual's credit history or the absence of prior insurance coverage when determining rates or eligibility for health, automobile, or homeowners insurance. In practice, insurance companies generally have not used such factors. The fiscal effects of Prop 45 are that the Department of Insurance would have increased administrative costs, probably not exceeding the low millions of dollars in most years. Funding for this would come from the fees paid by the insurance companies. No additional duties would be imposed on DMHC or Covered California, but their administrative costs might be affected by any delays in rate approval. Supporters say that spiraling health insurance rates have risen many times faster than inflation. Prop 45 will control health insurance costs just as Prop 103 successfully controlled auto insurance costs. And transparency required by Prop 45 will help prevent unreasonable rate hikes. Opponents say that Prop 45 adds another level of expensive bureaucracy to healthcare regulation. Decisions about healthcare should not be made by a politician, and that marketplace negotiations under the ACA could be harmed by the new regulatory approach. Supporters call themselves Yes on 45 and can be found at www.yeson45.org. Major financial contributions as of September 3rd, 2014, total $700,000, including Consumer Watchdog, which has donated $365,000, Green, Broylette, and Wheeler LLP, which has given $125,000, and the Committee for Corporate Accountability and Consumer Protection, which has given $105,000. Opponents call themselves No on 45, Californians Against Higher Healthcare Costs. They can be found at www.stophighercosts.org. Major financial contributions as of September 3, 2014, total $37 million, mostly by Kaiser Permanente, which has given $14,590,350, WellPoint, which has spent $12,500,000, and Blue Cross Blue Shield Association, which has spent $9,963,200. Proposition 46 is entitled Drug and Alcohol Testing of Doctors, Medical Negligence Lawsuits. It is an initiative statute. The question in this proposition is, should California require random drug testing of doctors, require doctors to check a statewide database before prescribing certain drugs, and raise the cap on non-economic damages in medical negligence lawsuits? The current situation is that California does not require drug testing of doctors. The state has a database to track prescriptions of certain controlled drugs, but does not require doctors to check the database before prescribing drugs. There are two kinds of damages in medical negligence lawsuits. One, economic damages, which pay for the financial costs of an injury, such as medical bills or loss of income. And two, non-economic damages, which pay for items such as pain and suffering and loss of quality of life. Attorneys in malpractice cases typically work on contingency. That is, they don't charge for their time, but instead take a percentage of the damages awarded their clients. In 1975, California enacted the Medical Injury Compensation Reform Act, MICRA, which placed a cap of $250,000 on non-economic damages in medical negligence litigation, and limited the percentage of a damages award that an attorney can take. Neither of these limits has ever been raised. There is no limit on economic damages. The proposal, Prop 46, would mandate random drug tests of doctors, plus tests after events of possible medical negligence, or if the doctor is suspected of using drugs or alcohol. Require doctors to check a statewide database before prescribing certain drugs to prevent patients from doctor shopping for multiple prescriptions. And raise the limit for non-economic damages in malpractice lawsuits to $1.1 million, which reflects the current adjusted for inflation since 1975, and indexes it to inflation going forward. The cap on attorney fees would remain unchanged. The fiscal effects of Prop 45 are that the cap increase on non-economic damages likely would increase costs of malpractice insurance and payments of malpractice claims, although the higher cap could encourage medical providers to practice medicine in a way that would decrease malpractice claims. The change would likely result in only a very small percentage increase in aggregate healthcare costs, less than 0.5% of the annual general fund budget. But that increase could have a significant effect on government healthcare spending, from tens of millions of dollars to several $100 million annually. The use of the drug database could reduce the amount of drugs prescribed, saving drug costs. Prescription drug abuse would be reduced, lowering related governmental costs, including treatment, rehabilitation, law enforcement, and incarceration. Testing doctors could prevent some medical errors. Savings are uncertain, but potentially significant, and would offset to some extent the increased governmental costs from raising the cap on non-economic damages. Supporters say that Prop 46 will save lives by cracking down on prescription drug abuse by doctors and protecting patients from impaired doctors, and that increasing the cap on compensation for pain and suffering will fairly value lives and hold doctors accountable for medical errors, and that use of a statewide database will reduce overprescription of dangerous drugs and save lives. Opponents say that Prop 46 uses drug testing of doctors to disguise its real intent, to increase the limit on medical malpractice awards. and that increasing the cap on damages will cause many doctors to move to states with lower malpractice insurance rates, and that use of the online database of personal and prescription drug history allows for the invasion of an individual's privacy. Supporters call themselves Your Neighbors for Patient Safety and can be found at www.yeson46.org. Major financial contributions as of September 3rd, 2014 total $1.9 million from the Consumer Attorneys of California, who have spent $1,183,000, the Consumer Watchdog, which has spent $290,000, and Calcagni Robinson Shapiro Davis Inc., which has spent $250,000. Opponents call themselves Patients and Providers to Protect Access and Contain Health Costs. They can be found at www.no146.com. Major financial contributions as of September 3rd, 2014 total $90 million, including the Cooperative of American Physicians, which has paid $15,168,704, the Doctors Company, which has paid $15,111,200, NorCal Mutual Insurance Company, which has paid $15 million, California Medical Association, which has paid $10,162,771, and Medical Insurance Exchange of California, which has paid $10 million.
Thank you. Now, Mickey will cover Proposition 47.
Hello. Proposition 47 is entitled Criminal Sentences, Misdemeanor Penalties. It is initiative statute. The question in this proposition is, should the penalties for certain offenders convicted of non-serious, non-violent crimes be reduced from felonies to misdemeanors? The current situation is that the California Penal Code classifies a felony as the most serious crime, with some felonies being graded as violent or serious, and some, such as murder and rape, graded as both. Felonies not classified as violent or serious include grand theft and possession of illegal drugs. Felony convictions result in incarceration for at least 1 year, usually in a prison facility rather than a county or local jail. After release, felony offenders are supervised by either state parole agents or county probation officers, depending on the severity of the conviction. Misdemeanors are less serious crimes, such as petty theft and public drunkenness, which usually result in fines, community supervision, and/or incarceration for less than 1 year in a county or local jail rather than a prison facility. Some crimes called wobblers, such as check forgery, can be charged as either felonies or misdemeanors, depending on the offender's history and the details of the crime. The proposal. Proposition 47 would reduce the penalty for most nonviolent wobblers and felonies to misdemeanors, unless the defendant has prior convictions for serious, violent, and serious crimes. Proposition 47 would permit resentencing of anyone currently serving a prison sentence for any of the offenses reclassified in Proposition 47 as misdemeanors, and certain offenders who have already completed a sentence for one of these felonies may apply to the court to have their convictions changed to misdemeanors. State savings from Proposition 47 would go to a newly created fund, Safe Neighborhoods and Schools Fund, for truancy and dropout prevention programs in schools, victim services, and mental health and drug treatment services designed to keep individuals out of prison and jail. As to the fiscal effects, the net savings as a result of Proposition 47 are estimated to be in the low hundreds of millions of dollars annually, based on fewer prisoners eligible for prison sentences and the release of current inmates through resentencing. County cost savings are estimated to be several $100 million annually, primarily due to freeing jail capacity and fewer people under community supervision. Supporters say Proposition 47 will reduce waste on prison spending and low-level nonviolent crimes. Law enforcement resources will be focused on violent and serious crimes. Savings will be redirected from prison spending to school programs, kindergarten through 12th grade, assistance for victims of crime, mental health programs, and drug treatment. Opponents say Proposition 47 will release thousands of dangerous inmates. It prevents judges from blocking the early release of prisoners except in rare cases. Proposition 47 will burden our criminal justice system. It will overcrowd jails with felons who should be in state prison and jam the courts with resentencing hearings. Supporters are Californians for Safe Neighborhood and Schools. The major financial contributions as of September 3, 2014, total $3.2 million. The primary contributors are Open Society Policy Center, $1,210,000. Public Storage, $750,000. Atlantic Philanthropies, $600,000. The opponents are the California Police Chiefs Association. Their major financial contributions as of September 3, 2014 total $17,500, and they are from small contributions from law enforcement associations. Now for Proposition 48. Proposition 48 is entitled Indian Gaming Compacts. It is a referendum, a vote to approve or repeal a statute. The question is, should the tribal gaming compacts negotiated by Governor Brown with the North Fork and Wiyot tribes and ratified by legislative statute be allowed to go into effect? The situation. In 2000, voters amended the state constitution to allow tribes to open casinos on Indian land if the tribe and the governor agree on a compact and the legislature and the federal government approve the compact. In 2012, Governor Brown negotiated an agreement with the North Fork Rancheria of the Mono tribe. The state legislature approved and the federal government accepted this compact, which allows the tribe to acquire tribal land in Madera County, approximately 38 miles from the tribe's reservation, and to build a casino and a hotel on it. Federal law usually prohibits tribes from building casinos on tribal land acquired after 1988. However, an exception can be approved if the acquisition of the new land can be shown to be in the tribe's best interest and not harmful to the surrounding community. The Bureau of Indian Affairs affirmed that this was the case for the North Fork Casino, as the tribe's existing holdings are not sufficiently large to allow a casino and hotel, and they are located in a remote area in the Sierra National Forest. The compact with the Wiyot tribe, also covered by this statute, prohibits the tribe from opening a casino on tribal lands in Humboldt County, instead providing them a share of the North Fork Casino's profits. The proposal. Proposition 48 is a referendum that asks voters to approve or reject the gaming compacts with the two tribes. A yes vote approves the legislative statute that ratifies the compacts. A no vote rejects the statute and avoids the compacts. The fiscal effects of Proposition 48. The tribe would make annual payments to the state and local governments to offset their costs arising from the existence of the new casino, which would probably average about $1.5 million annually over the 20-year period of the compact. Madera County and City would likely receive between $16 million and $35 million in one-time payments from the tribe for specified services, and would receive about $5 million in annual payments over the life of the compact, once the casino opens. Other governments in the area could receive $3 million annually over the life of the compact. There may be increased revenue from economic growth in the Madera County area, generally offset by revenue losses from decreased economic activity in surrounding counties. Supporters say the North Fork Casino has local support and would create over 4,000 jobs. The casino would bring revenue to Madera County and to the state of California. The location of the casino is supported by local, state, and federal officials. Opponents say these compacts break the promise that Indian casinos would only be located on original reservation land. Rather than creating jobs, the casino would take jobs and resources from nearby areas. The door would be opened to an avalanche of new off-reservation casinos. Supporters of the Vote Yes on 48 campaign. Major financial contributions as of September 3, 2014, total $325,000. Station Casinos and North Fork Rancheria of Mono Indians contributed that amount. Opponents on Proposition 48 keep Vegas-style casinos out of neighborhoods. Major financial contributions as of September 3, 2014, total $4,100,000. I'm sorry, that's $4.1 million. The contributors are Table Mountain Rancheria, $2,228,000. Brigade Capital Management, $1,667,000, and Riva Ridge, $226,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Now Renee will deal with Measure P.
Los Angeles County Measure P is entitled 2014 Safe Neighborhood and Parks Measure. The question in the measure is whether Los Angeles County should impose an annual $23 per parcel special tax throughout the county to replace expiring taxes and ensure continued funding for improving, developing, and maintaining parks, beaches, and recreational projects. The situation is that in 1992 and 1996, Los Angeles County voters passed propositions assessing residential and business property to fund acquisition, development, and maintenance of beaches, parks, and natural lands, tree planting, gang intervention, and improvement of recreational facilities. The assessment amounts varied with the type and extent of property and with the amount of benefit the property received, generally resulting in higher assessments for more valuable properties. The passage of Proposition 218, also in November 1996, ended the use of benefit assessments for general benefits, parks, recreational facilities, etc., limiting such assessments to those providing a special benefit, such as trash collection. The 1992 and 1996 measures are now expiring in 2015 and 2019, respectively, and no acceptable progressive assessment formula varying with property value was found. Thus, a flat tax per parcel was the only feasible alternative. The proposal of Measure P allows the county to raise about $53 million per year for 30 years by imposing an annual flat tax throughout the county of $23 per property parcel. The funds will be used to acquire, develop, improve, restore, rehabilitate, and maintain parks, recreational, cultural, and community facilities and open space within Los Angeles County. The funds would be allocated as follows: 30% to the county for regional projects, open space, foothill, mountain, trail, river, wetland, and stream projects. 20% to cities and unincorporated areas within the county with allocations based on number of parcels in a project as a percentage of total parcels in the county. 15% to the county for parks, beaches, and clean water park projects. 15% for maintenance and servicing of projects funded from 1992 and 1996 measure funds, 10% to the county for underserved communities, 5% for competitive grants to public agencies and nonprofit organizations, and 5% for administration. The fiscal effective measure P is that it will raise approximately $1.6 billion over 30 years to replace expiring tax funding. Supporters say that Proposition P continues valued and needed parks and recreational projects. $23 per year per parcel is little enough to support projects that benefit all, and that we all are benefiting from funds wisely invested in community projects in the last 20 years, so the investments should continue. Opponents say that changing from progressive to regressive funding advantages those most able to pay, and that some of the wealthiest are given a windfall of thousands of dollars a year by this measure, and that too little of the available funds benefit the most underserved communities. We hope we have given you the information you need to make your choices on these propositions on the November 4th ballot. Our thanks again to the City of Burbank, and especially Drew Sugars, Public Information Officer, and the outstanding technical crew of the Burbank Channel, Colleen Duffy-Felix and Carol Dorman. As we mentioned in the opening, the League of Women Voters has a website that is designed to provide voters with more information about the propositions. Its address is cavotes.org. And if you are interested in tracking the contributions made in the campaign, you will find instructions as to how to do this. You may also have questions about your personal ballot, how to get an absentee ballot, where your polling place is, and who is running for the state and Los Angeles County offices, such as Superior Court Judge, Tax Assessor, or Sheriff. You can find all of this and more on another League website, www.smartvoter.org. Thank you, and be sure to vote November 4th.